Welcome to Horseshoe Politics. Today is September 24th, 2020, and I was originally going to do a video today about a current event. I was going to do a video either about one of the events that was recently in the news or another video about the upcoming election, but I didn't really have a video in mind related to that. But today's video is kind of related to the election. Basically, in this video, I'm going to be continuing off of my video I made a couple weeks ago on my improvements that I would propose to the Electoral College. Because in that video, I proposed a system that was like a compromise between liberals and conservatives, because liberals want to abolish the Electoral College fully in favor of popular vote deciding the president, while conservatives want to keep the system how it is. So I proposed a middle path alternative where you keep the electoral college but make it so that the electoral votes are more proportionately allocated to each candidate. Because the I showed in the other video, the problem with the electoral college wasn't the fact that smaller states got more votes. The biggest problem was the fact that whoever won a state got every single electoral vote, even if it was 50% or 70%. So 50% was the same as 100%, 49% was the same as 0%. So neither candidate has any incentive to try to campaign in any state except swing states like the Rust Belt, Ohio, Florida. California, nobody campaigns in because it's going to go Democrat no matter what. Texas, until recently, nobody campaigned in because it was guaranteed to go Republican. Now that's changing. I've made videos on that, but that's besides the point. So this video, I want to continue off of the video I made a couple weeks ago where I talked about my proposed alternative. So I want to go into detail about how my proposed alternative system would have actually worked in the 2016 presidential election had it been implemented at the time. So right now, I have the actual 2016 election map pulled up on screen. Donald Trump got 306 votes, and Hillary Clinton only got 232 votes in the Electoral College. The real number was slightly lower because of faithless electors, but I'm not factoring that into the model. I'm just doing the 306 to 232 original election night standings. So Donald Trump lost the popular vote by quite a bit, as you can see here. He only got 62 million votes to Hillary Clinton 65 million, so 46% to 48%. So Clinton beat Trump by over 2%, but she still lost in the Electoral College by quite a bit, almost 80 electoral votes, over 70. So we're going to talk about now, if my proposed system had been implemented, who would have won the election. So if you haven't watched that video, basically the system I proposed is each state still has the guaranteed 2 electoral votes, but every other electoral vote across the country is allocated proportional to the amount of popular votes that they get. So Wyoming will still have 3 electoral votes instead of just 1. Texas will still have 30 instead of 36. Each of the states, even the small states, get 2 electoral votes no matter what, based on their 2 senators. So basically, the system still helps out the small states. So each state would get 2 votes per senator, or 2 votes because of the 2 senators corresponding to the 2 senators, 1 vote per senator basically. And then after that, every other electoral vote is corresponded to the population size. Kind of like how the House versus Senate, how that dynamic works. Basically applying that here, keeping it, that's how the Electoral College works. But you allocate the electoral votes proportionately to how many popular votes each candidate actually gets. So going to this map now, this is the map of the statewide winners of the 2016 election. So this is where you take the winner of each state and give that candidate 2 electoral votes per state. Donald Trump in 2016 won 30 states, 30 territories, so he would get 60 electoral votes from that. Hillary Clinton won 21 territories, so she would have gotten 42 electoral votes. Here it only says 40, but that's because I couldn't add Washington, D.C. to this model. But Washington, D.C. would have 2 of its own electoral votes that would go to Hillary Clinton, since Hillary Clinton won Washington, D.C. in 2016. So Donald Trump at 60, Hillary Clinton at 42. So the first 102 electoral votes are allocated just based on statewide winners, kind of like the Senate. It's a statewide vote, and that way each state has equal representation regardless of the state's population. That way you help out the small states a bit. So we're keeping that part of the Electoral College the same, but we're changing other parts of the Electoral College. Now here's the interesting part. What you do from here is to look at the percentage that each candidate got of the total popular vote. So for Clinton, it would be 48.18%. Then you would multiply that by 435. Load. Okay, I did that wrong. It should be 0.4818. So if she got 48% of the popular vote, that means she should also get 48% of the electoral college votes in my system. That means Hillary Clinton would get 210. So if you put that here now, 210, she already had 42. 210 plus 42 is 252. Now let's look at Trump's electoral college votes. Donald Trump already got 60 from the statewide votes. But now if you look at the popular vote, he got 46.09% of that. So 0.4609 times 435. So according to my system, if he gets 46% of the popular vote, he also gets 46% of the electoral college votes. So he would have gotten exactly 200 electoral votes here. And if you add that to the 60 he already had, that's 260 electoral votes. So already Trump still has more electoral votes than Clinton. Trump has 260, I made a typo, 260 electoral votes, while Clinton only has 252. So Trump's still ahead of Clinton, but here's the kicker. Neither candidate has a majority. Neither candidate has the 270 that's required to actually win the election, because you need a majority of the electoral votes to win the election, but that's 270 electoral votes. Neither one of them have that. The reason? Third-party candidates. Gary Johnson, Jill Stein. See, under the current system, third-party candidates never get any electoral votes because they never win an entire state. But in this system, in my proposed system, they would still be able to get electoral votes without winning entire states, just based on their share of the popular vote. So Gary Johnson, if he wins 3.28% of the popular vote, multiply that 435, he would get 3.28% of the electoral college votes, which is around 14 electoral votes. So 14 electoral votes for Gary Johnson, do the same for Jill Stein. You don't add the statewide votes, electoral votes to either of these candidates because neither one of them won any states in 2016, but they still get some electoral votes. Times 435, we're looking at Jill Stein's count now. So type in that. Jill Stein would have gotten 5 electoral votes if you round to the nearest integer. So let's go through this again. Clinton, 252 electoral votes. Trump, 260 electoral votes. Gary Johnson, 14 electoral votes. Jill Stein, 5 electoral votes. So this is actually really interesting. If no candidate gets a majority, then it's actually the legislative branch that decides the president, because the House of Representatives decides the president, but the Senate decides the vice president independently, in the case that nobody gets a majority. I might make another video on this. It's a really long process, but I think this would be a really interesting system if it was actually in place. But here's the thing. The third-party candidates still act as spoilers in this system. So what you need to do is you need to implement a new style of voting, a new voting system. And you guys may have heard of ranked choice voting, but this would effectively avoid this dilemma where you have smaller candidates taking away from the larger candidates. Basically what ranked choice voting is, where you rank each candidate based on how much you like them. So you would rank your best candidate, favorite candidate as number 1, your second favorite as number 2, so on. That way, if you support a third-party candidate but he doesn't get a lot of votes, your votes don't get wasted. They just go to your next favorite candidate. That way, no vote gets wasted, because in the current system, third-party votes get basically wasted because the third-party candidates never win. But those third-party votes get taken away from the big 2 parties. So if you support a third-party candidate, you're taking a vote away from the major candidate that you support more. Like if you were a Green Party supporter in 2016, if you weren't voting for Green Party, you would have probably voted for the Democratic Party. But since you didn't vote for the Democratic Party, you voted for Green Party, that's a vote taken away from Clinton, and that made it a bit easier for Trump to win. Now, I understand that third-party candidates are important, and that's exactly why I think the voting system needs to change, because otherwise people feel guilty for voting for third-party candidates. But I think that third-party candidates are important, because if you only have 2 parties in the election system, then you're not going to have many options, and not much is going to change, because if you only have to choose between 2 options, then a candidate doesn't have to be good. They only have to be better than their opponent in a two-party system. But if there's like 10 candidates, that's a lot more competition. The candidates will have to be a lot better when they have more competitors that they actually have to worry about. But I think that's a lot already for this video. I think I'm just gonna end it here. The whole voting system thing is a completely separate topic. That's just a consequence of what I proposed here, because third party candidates would get electoral votes, but that would take away from the big two candidates. And in this system, neither candidate would get a 270 majority, so the election would actually have to be thrown up to the House and the Senate. House chooses the president, Senate chooses the vice president. It's a long process. I don't fully understand it myself, but I'm just gonna stop the video here. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you tomorrow.